Let's bring in the front bench. Sabrina Grover was a federal Liberal candidate in the 2021 election. She's a senior advisor at Spark Advocacy and North Star Public Affairs. Jordan Paquette is a senior consultant at Blue Sky Strategy Group. He formerly worked in Prime Minister Stephen Harper's office. Former Ontario NDP MPP Gurdatin Singh, he's now vice president at Crestview Strategy. He's also the brother of federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. And Marie Vestel is an editorial writer with Le Devoir. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to Power Play, everyone. Sabrina, I'm going to start with you on this one. The first thing you notice about this ad compared to the last one is that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is slightly more featured in this one, but he's still not named. You think that's a deliberate move?
You know, I think what they're probably trying to do is test a variety of different concepts and see what works and start to at least put something out there, which for, I think for the last year at least, both MPs and strategists have kind of been asking for that. They've been looking for something at least to start to put out there and see how it works. I think it's worth testing different kinds of concepts, and what may have been a very leader-centric focused campaign in 2021 may not be the same type of campaign that we run in what I assume is now going to be 2025. And so I think at the very least, it's positive that they've put this ad out. I think it's a good reflection about the things that the Liberal Party is doing and delivering for Canadians, because often what happens is that message gets lost in the news, it gets lost in the jumble. You know, a mom in Oakville doesn't necessarily know or care about some of the programs that have come out. So I think this is a good first step in reminding Canadians what the Liberals have done.
Yeah, and I'll come back to that in just a second. First, though, Jordan, Long said the videos were a welcome change. Do you think they're going to change how caucus feels about the Prime Minister?
Well, it seems that could have been the target, is to try and quell some caucus dissent. But I mean, I think these ads are coming a day late and a dollar short. And they're not big, significant TV ad buys. I mean, these are just small digital campaigns. So they're still going to be way, way behind the Conservatives on this. And Trudeau wasn't featured that heavily in them. To go from 2015, when it was Team Trudeau, everybody's has to be behind the leader. He was their brand, their popularity. Now they're really just trying to shift the focus to the rest of the team. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, Marie, what are you hearing from MPs about how they're feeling about these ads, and whether or not the fact that the Prime Minister isn't featured is actually something that they think would benefit them?
I think they're relieved that there are some ads, whatever they are, at this point. I mean, we've been hearing from Liberals since the summer that they wanted to see some sort of ads to reply to the really aggressive messaging and advertising by the Conservatives. So I think it was long overdue. And even when Mr. Poilievre was elected leader, already I was hearing from Liberals saying, when are we going to counterattack? And it's a surprising strategy to wait so close to the election from the Liberals, given that their two past leaders were framed quite early on in a negative light, and it stuck. So you have to wonder if at this point, Mr. Poilievre's image has sort of been cemented by now in people's minds, and is it too late? Might not be, but at this point of the cycle of a Liberal government after 9 years, it does seem like they waited an awful long time. That being said, when you look at the numbers, the advertising numbers are completely disproportionate. The Tories are spending 22 times more than the Liberals. But when you look at fundraising, kind of explains, one kind of explains the other.
Yeah, they're all proportional.
They have more money. Yeah. So I think the Liberals' hands were maybe a bit tied in terms of how much advertising they could have done, but one has to wonder if they could have done at least a little bit before now.
Yeah, and Gurdatin, the content of this is interesting because in it, they talk about the record, including dental care, pharmacare. Sounds familiar to NDPers, and how do NDPers feel about the fact that two of those things that were part of the supply and confidence agreement are now part of the victory lap by the Liberals?
Was this an ad for the Liberals, or is this the Liberals providing an ad for the NDP? Because all the most significant wins were NDP wins. Dental care was pushed forward by the supply confidence agreement, just like pharmacare was. Even the slogan of "We're fighting for you," that's the exact slogan that the leader of the NDP has on his podium and on his sign. So it clearly demonstrates that the wins that they are now advertising are those that came as a result of the strong fight and advocacy that the NDP did with the Liberal government. And furthermore, I think it really just demonstrates that there's really not that much opportunity for the Liberals to form another government right now. I think voters are very disenfranchised with the Liberals. They're looking for an alternative and a progressive alternative. And that one is, I think, very much with the NDP. We see them with that polling numbers, with NDP is now ahead of the Liberals in English Canada. There's a lot of clear direction and momentum for the NDP, and this ad really reinforces that.
Sabrina, is it political opportunism, or are they taking credit for NDP programs here?
I think throughout the course of the last 2 years for the supply and confidence agreement, the NDP have not seen a significant poll bump from any of these, any of these policies that have been put forward. The Liberals have owned the message, they've owned the narrative, they've owned the rollout. They're the ones that are seen negotiating with the provinces. I mean, of course they're the government. And so I don't really think it's something that the NDP can come back and start to take the narrative back on. I know they've tried really hard. I know Jagmeet's put it in the window a lot, but I don't think they've successfully been able to claim that narrative. And so I think for the NDP, the question is, over the next 6 months in the lead up to an election, what are they going to put in the window? And specifically, how are they going to differentiate themselves from the Conservatives? Because, as they pull the supply and confidence agreement, a couple of other things that they seem to agree with on the Conservatives, like they're kind of backbending into agreeing with Pierre Poilievre and submitting to what he's putting on the table. They don't really see the NDP putting out a clear message.
I wanted to go back, Jordan, to something that Marie mentioned, and the lack of definition of Pierre Poilievre by the Liberals. Mm-hmm. Is it too late now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, the Conservatives have been super bang-on message over the last year and a half since Pierre Poilievre came to lead the party. They're focusing on those affordability messages, and these are the messages that Canadians are very much focused on. Issues around housing. When was the last time Conservatives have dominated that issue? I think the Liberals are trying to change the channel now. Obviously, they're going to try and do whatever works. I think they're going to try and drive out. He had one Liberal MP out calling Pierre a threat to democracy the other day. Mm-hmm. So they're going to start bringing back these American-style attack ads soon. Once we've seen that before, when Liberals get their backs against the wall, they just come out and start swinging at anything that would work.
Yeah, and Marie, I mean, the Prime Minister has said, look, Canadians aren't in this place, aren't really out of headspace right now to be thinking about this type of thing. Do you think that holds any water, and the reason, against what you said, that this is a little too late?
I think maybe on policy they have a point. It might be too early to show Canadians and perhaps their caucus, which seems to be wondering what it is, but maybe it's a bit too early to show what their renewed political offer will be for the next election, because it's true that people might not be paying attention. I mean, proof being, we're going to talk about the American election in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But I do think that it might be a bit too late to strike that contrast between Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Poilievre. But to everyone else's point, I think they're all saying that they have the best messaging. Fine, you guys say what you want. But I do think that for the Liberals, they are going to have some. They're going to have to renew some messaging and give some idea of what they want to do next. Already 2021, their platform wasn't full of that many big new ideas. That you did seem to feel that there was a bit of lack of wind in their ideas. So I think that's the biggest challenge. It's not just distinguishing themselves from the Conservatives, but saying we also have new ideas and here's what we offer. Not just we're not that guy, but what can they give Canadians?
Yeah, and not voting against someone, but giving them an offer.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be very much an election on who I don't want, and I think Canadians might want someone they do want.
And sometimes that's Canadian politics, unfortunately.